Writing an exam-style question. Pigeon English. The pigeon. A real exam question is more likely to ask us to look at the themes or ideas that Kelman presents and how he presents them. But one of the most important tools he uses is narrative voice, perspective and style. Therefore, it is really important that we consider one of the strangest characters in the novel, the pigeon. Now, at this stage, I think it's important to consider that English is not just about hitting the mark, scoring the grade, and showing the examiner, who is really just a very tired teacher in disguise, what you can do. It is about forming your own ideas and opinions. Therefore, the exercise we did before today was all about that. It tested your own ideas and arguments against other people's. It was about breaking Kelman's text apart and making sense of Harry's world the same way Harry is trying to make sense of his own. But today, we really need to start to think about how we are going to use those ideas to put together an argument that will demonstrate those skills and thoughts about the role of the pigeon in Kelman's novel. So, first of all, let's consider the question we are being asked. Why does Kelman include the pigeon's voice within the novel? There are many different answers to this question, and, as with many elements of English literature, your ideas are unlikely to be wrong, if you are able to argue them out with well-chosen evidence from the text. So we need to ask ourselves a number of questions to really pull the question apart. Why does the pigeon exist? Why does he have his own voice? When do we meet him first? And does he appear at particular moments? For example, how is Harry feeling when he appears? How useful is this new third-person perspective? There are probably many more questions that you can ask yourself, but before we dive deeper, we need to take a look at the exam criteria. As you know, it is split into 3 main assessment objectives, with the 4th being allocated to your use of written English. The examiner wants to know that you can firstly, for AO1, read, understand and respond to whole texts and the question you are asked. You will need to develop a personal response and use quotations to support and illustrate those interpretations. Secondly, for AO2, you will need to show that you can analyse the language, form and structure used by a writer to create meaning and effect, using relevant subject terminology. And thirdly, for AO3, you will need to show that you can understand the relationship between the text and the context in which it was written and is now read. These are the same across all 3 texts and the poetry that you are studying for your GCSE. Without looking too much into the language of the mark scheme at this stage, we need to consider how we are going to hit the criteria within the 45 minutes we have to write the exam question. So now, you are going to take 10 minutes to consider how you might cover each of the AOs that we have just considered. And once you have done this, you will need to pick 3 key questions or ideas that you wish to explore in detail to develop your argument. Now that you've pulled some of your ideas together, you will need to explore how you are going to fit them into your essay in a coherent way that answers the question and allows you to develop your argument in a thoughtful, critical and exploratory manner. An introduction is a really important tool as it outlines your key ideas before you write, almost answering the question in a short and concise way, opening up your key ideas to the examiner. So let's have a look at my introduction. Pigeon English explores the experiences, thoughts and feelings human beings face as they struggle to find their place and how they fit into the world in which they live. Kelman's pigeon is a unique, quiet, yet persistent voice that is littered throughout the novel. Arguably, he is the most important character as he provides a third-person perspective on the protagonist. Through the pigeon's eyes, Kelman questions and highlights further the key struggles that Harry and all teenagers face within the worlds that they live and are thrown into, the violence and the temptation. I have used my introduction to outline the novel's key themes. This shows that I understand the book. If the question had asked me about the lives of teenagers, I would have used that in my starting sentence. But as it is broad, I have considered the key ideas that the pigeon links to. Notice also how I have used the word arguably later in the introduction. The examiner can't say, "No, it's not," because you have not been definite in your response. You could use the phrase, "This essay seeks to explore," but this is likely to be used in level 5 and 6 answers rather than level 7. You now need to spend another 5 minutes considering what the pigeon represents for you, and then you can write your own introduction. You must think about what you are going to explore later in your essay. Now you have written your introduction. Remember, in an exam, you will be in a pressured situation. If you are struggling with your introduction, you can leave it and move on, or just write a very short one and move straight into your essay. So now you have an introduction and your 3 key ideas. Before we begin to write the main section of your essay, let's just remind ourselves how we can embed our quotations in a level 7 way. If I wanted to take the quotation, "Just another invention of a spiteful God," I wouldn't need to do this. The pigeon says that God is an invention and that he is spiteful. Just another invention of a spiteful God. This shows that, etc. Instead, I could write, "The pigeon's suggestion that God is both an invention and spiteful suggests that he is perhaps not a messenger of God at all." As you can see, I have used those quotations as part of my sentence and therefore they are embedded. You will now have 30 minutes to write the main part of your essay. I suggest you spend the first 5 minutes gathering your quotations. As you are writing, do not be afraid to cross your ideas out and change your word choices, because this shows that you are editing as you go along. The final part of your essay is the conclusion. You need to draw your ideas together and come up with a final concluding argument to draw together your response. For example, ultimately, the pigeon is the voice that interprets the human world from a bird's eye perspective. He silently warns Harry, who is acutely aware of his presence. Kelman uses the pigeon's voice perhaps as a warning to the reader to not take the freedoms of the world for granted, to be more patient and positive, as suggested by Kelman in his final note to the reader. Your final 5 minutes can be used to write your conclusion. Well done. You have now completed your Pigeon English essay, focusing on the pigeon.